So first off, Craig Rones, I'm with Trustwave. I'll tell you a little bit about who we are. We are a managed security services company. We've been in the business about 25 years. We have a very robust portfolio about stopping the bad guys, right? We're a mission-focused organization. We're here to help protect our clients so they can conduct their business securely. We have a portfolio of managed services. The most pertinent one right now that you see a lot of news coverage on is something called managed detection and response. I'm guessing most people in this room probably haven't heard of it. We have a suite of consulting and professional services from strategy and diagnostics to this something called penetration testing, digital forensics, and incident response. And of course, because most threat actors come in via email and they want your data, we have email security software products and database security software products. So we cover the whole ecosystem of cybersecurity across the board. What's really interesting about our space, it has gone through fundamental transformation and continues to transform at a pace that I've never experienced. I'm relatively new to this industry, been in it about a year and a half, come out of IT services and out of Dell and NTT Data and other organizations. The rate of change, the pace of customer and change and their preferences, the number of competitors continues to accelerate beyond belief. We live in a very crowded space, and by way of example, you guys all familiar with Gartner market guides, replaced a lot of Magic Quadrants. We are one of only 6 companies in the 4 market guides that are most pertinent to our business. That is managed security services, managed detection and response, managed SIEM, and digital forensics and incident response, which you'll hear called DFIR from time to time. Gartner evaluates over 1,400 vendors in just those 4 markets. So I've got over 1,400 competitors I know of, a lot more because I also compete with in-house cybersecurity teams. Now, you heard Matt talk a little bit about ChatGPT and what it's going to go do. I'm going to throw out some numbers for you by way of example. At our sales kickoff we just completed a few weeks ago, we brought in a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer, up on stage to talk about his relationships with vendors, with partners, and how he chooses who to do business with. The data he shows, it's anecdotal, but you guys have all seen similar data. He receives 167 unsolicited vendor emails every day. He receives 43 unsolicited vendor calls every week. Once a quarter, one time a quarter, at most, he actually returns a call. Now you think about that, that's 15,000 emails, over 600 phone calls, he responds to one of them. Think about what ChatGPT does with that. Marketers love it, right? It's going to make us more efficient. We can scale faster. Go ahead and add a 0 to each one of those numbers, except for the last one, which is that return call. Which means it's really, really critically important for us to understand when our clients and prospects are in market and for what, for us to reach them at the appropriate time that they're considering it. So let me talk a little bit about our journey, then I'll get into some of the detail about how we leverage the intent data to spark demand, ultimately create revenue and margin for us. I came on board about a year and a half ago. In that time, we've turned over 60% of our marketing staff. That's not a typo, 60%. Some voluntarily left, some struggled with the new model we were putting in place, but 60%. We have a brand new marketing leadership team, but for one person who was fantastic at her job. We dramatically increased our targets across the board. So we said, you know what, we think we're sitting on a gold mine, we'll sign up for a bigger number. And we went to our CEO and CFO and said, we're gonna go take that risk. In the meantime, while we were overhauling our staff, we also decided to rip and replace almost our entire MarTech stack. So we introduced Bombora, integrated it in all facets, which I'll talk about here in a second. We ripped out our marketing automation platform. We had an ABM platform that was being used for reporting only and for bad reporting. So we figured out actually how to use it for effective use and to go create value. Oh, and by the way, we also migrated our CMS at the same time. And the company was going through a company-wide transformation. All of this surrounded by all these competitors continuing to move and bring new offerings to market, new entrants coming in. So a very pivotal year for us as a company overall. So how did we start to succeed against that? The first is, and you heard some conversations about this yesterday, and you guys live and breathe this every day, it starts with figuring out who do we want to target and for what. And so we very quickly stratified our market, and we stratified in 2 ways. Who do we want to invest in, i.e. spend dollars to reach via advertising, to reach via display and LinkedIn, to reach through other channels, through events, physical events, through virtual events, through white glove events, et cetera. And who do we want to actually go target with fully automated campaigns where the only investment really is the time of the marketing team to go build it and the time to go convert those leads into pipeline. So we spent quite a bit of time working with our sales teams to stratify that mix, and I'll go into that now here in just a second, as well as be able to leverage all the different tools in our toolkit that we have at our disposal for us. And so this was a fun exercise going through sales and sales leadership, often new sales leadership, because quite frankly, in the transformation the company was under, they didn't know who we wanted to sell to. And so this sparked a lot of conversations much broader than marketing about who we want to target, who we want to do business with going forward. So going into the target account list, we shifted this quite a bit, and we started to look at it from a number of different vectors. I alluded to here a second ago, the economic winds have changed. Whereas we were all drafting off them, I think everybody in this room drafting off of them for years and years and years, all of a sudden we had these massive headwinds, right? We've got inflation shooting up. We've got recessionary pressure in almost every major market around the globe. And for those of us in cybersecurity, this whole little thing called the Russia-Ukraine crisis or the war or the conflict created a whole bunch of different challenges and opportunities for us. And just as a side note, it's the first time in modern warfare we're able to see cyber tactics deployed at scale, and we're able to monitor and look and evaluate what all of those threat actors are doing, both on the Russian and pro-Russian side and the Ukrainian and pro-Ukrainian side, to understand their behaviors, their tactics, their techniques, where they're moving beyond the borders and exploiting those in corporations like yourselves. So fascinating for us, all these pressures surrounding it. So we started to take a look at who are our existing customers that we want to grow. And this is about finding the white space. It's about understanding where are those adjacencies, where are the upsells and the cross-sells, because oftentimes, like probably many of you in the room, we tend to sell single services or single products to single clients. Occasionally, we do a pretty good job of selling adjacencies, but I think as a community, there's a lot more that we can go do. And for us, it's about not just maximizing our share of wallet in those accounts, but it's bringing more value to them through an integrated ecosystem of cybersecurity products and services that better protect them from the bad guys. We also took a look at this notion of waking the dead. And these were accounts that we formerly had some relationship with, whether we came in number 2 in the beauty show of a large TCV pursuit, or we had a small nascent consulting project or two here and there, or we had executives that moved back and forth between companies that we had a relationship with. We tried to take a look at how do we wake the dead, how do we uncover opportunities with them, and then likewise we took a look at this thing called lookalikes. And for the lookalike, it's understanding where do we win today? Where do we provide the best services and capabilities that our clients value? How do we find more companies that look like that? And so we spent quite a bit of time looking at this holistically and looking how intent data can help us infiltrate every one of those different communities of accounts. So our existing customers, and of which most companies have a high concentration of a few accounts that generate the most revenue, where can we find that white space? What do the intent signals tell us about opportunities for cross-sell and upsell? For the accounts that were in the wake the dead category, what's it telling us about their demand signal? What's our excuse to go reach out via an executive relationship or an email campaign or some sort of outbound campaign or something else? And for the lookalikes, we're really building new relationships. What does that intent data tell us about where we should enter those conversations? Which topics underneath the clusters of the offerings that we track this in data, which of those are the right conversation starters to enter into new relationships? So we spent quite a bit of time refining this target account list approach, integrating all of the intelligence we have to give us the best shot of converting this into something that we can monetize across the board. Now, when we look at our campaigns, we look at them from a number of different vectors. And this is an example of a set of automated campaigns that we've been able to implement over the past year and a half. So I'm going to go through this in some level of detail. I'll be available for questions after this over breakfast, and I think some of the other conversations, others are just getting started on this piece of the journey. So it starts with our intent data. And by the way, intent data, getting folks to adopt it in your organizations, those that are early on, it's a 12 or 18-month process to get there. It is not immediate. You've got to find the quick wins before you can get to the point where you have great wins. So for us, we've moved past that stage. We're now in the stage of we're exploiting it to we think it's fullest, but I think there's more opportunity for us. So this is an example where we start with intent data. And we look at it We've mapped it across our portfolio, those 8 offerings you saw on that wheel on the first slide. We have clusters set up with each of those offerings. We have clusters set up with our competitors. We look at the specific topics in those clusters that are surging at any point in time. And when they surge via API, it automatically sends a trigger to Terminus, our ABM platform, to go start serving up ads to the titles that we care about. Now, we've listed a couple on this slide, but the reality in what you heard before, our buying committee is really, really large. It's not just Chief Information Security Officers, Director of Security Ops. It's often the CIO, and often the CIO has security responsibility. Unlike other capabilities, it's the CFO who's worried about risk, it's the Chief Legal Officer, it's the CEO, and often these go all the way up to the board level. Right, and don't forget, there's this little thing called procurement that you also have to go, drive the cost savings message with, especially now. So we look at Terminus, our ABM platform, deploys our digital display ads for those targeted audience. The whole point of this, bring them into our digital front door, bring them into our website, where we can capture their behavior, we can begin to retarget them, we can feed them into HubSpot, which calculates our lead score. And by the way, what we do now with HubSpot, which we couldn't do a year ago with a prior vendor, is we actually dial up the lead score if we're seeing intent versus a lead that's not seeing intent. So that's allowed us to put better quality leads into the process, reduce some of the noise, and I'll talk about that here in a second. This whole first part of our process is about getting from organizational knowledge to contact knowledge. It's about reaching people, reaching organizations versus making something actionable at the contact level, because ultimately if we're going to go create pipeline or we're going to go close deals, we're going to win revenue, we're going to create margin dollars for the company, we have to engage with the people that have the influence to go write the check or know the people that write the checks. Right? So this is about going from that macro level onto the contact level. Then the next step of the process, we do have BDRs in-house. They are generally about 20-something years old, so they're really, really young. But they work pretty well. And we've put a process together literally, and this was a big transformation for us, to get the process of handing a qualified lead to them automatically pass from HubSpot to Salesforce for them to act on it within minutes of receiving it. And we've set up SLAs with our BDR team where if it's a C-level or equivalent title, their SLA is under an hour from when they receive it in their inbox. They've done their first outreach against a structured workflow we've already enabled in Salesforce.com with multiple touch points and steps along the way. If it's not a C-level title, they have a little bit more time, but in any case, under 24 hours, they've got first outreach. When you think about a competitive landscape with over 1,400 competitors we compete against, really important, you're one of the first ones to engage when you have a demand signal that says they're in market for a capability. Then at that point in time, their whole goal, get it to a meeting, get further qualified, understand the scope of offerings that apply to it, rough estimate the size of the opportunity that may be there, and hand it off to an enterprise sales rep as quick as they can so that sales rep then go through their best process and further qualify it from an early stage opportunity to a qualified opportunity, then take it all the way through to close. So what we've done with this, once again, is we've gone from account general knowledge, taken it down to contact-specific intelligence, pass it on through workflows to get to a point where it creates an opportunity for our sales teams to go pursue and hopefully win the deal and not lose the deal. Almost fully automated with workflow and best process attached to it. And that best process, really, really important, because I think you guys all have in each one of your companies examples of certain sellers and certain processes that work well, but they haven't been scaled across the organization. You haven't found how to take what the people that are retiring their quota the fastest are doing the best and make that the process that everyone goes through. So this was our attempt, and quite successful in many respects, lots of learnings of getting to there. So once again, fully automated and enabled by workflow. What this also has done is enabled us to do 3 things. One is, by show of hands, how many of you hear from your sales teams, there are too many crappy leads coming through the system? Anyone heard that before? Yeah, just a couple times. And what does that do for the sales and marketing relationship? Right, not the best, right? So this has enabled us to put higher quality leads and more of them in their queues and reduce the number of leads overall. And quite frankly, I don't care about the number of leads. I don't care about the number of qualified leads. I care about revenue and margin on the back end of this. So my job is give them the fewest qualified leads for us to exceed our target numbers. And that's what I'm pointing my marketing team towards, rather than just give us more leads at a lower cost point. That doesn't matter. I want to get them to the finish line. The second thing is it's allowed us to move very rapidly and have automated triggered campaigns. So as the market shifts around us, as buying behavior changes, as people have new needs in the space I'm in, oftentimes when someone's breached, we see it in the intent data. We see exactly what they're researching. They're researching data breaches. They're researching incident response. They're researching managed detection and response. They can figure out how do they make sure they've got the right response mechanisms in place for the next time this happens. So this allows us to move very quickly to capitalize on those in the time of need. The third thing it does is, we've all grown up in a world where there's been lots of cold calling. There's nothing wrong with cold calling, but think about the numbers I shared a little while ago. 43 cold calls a week, which is roughly 600 a quarter that any particular buyer or influencer receives. If you're not calling them at the time when they have a need in market, or you have some pre-existing connection, the chance of them ever calling back or picking up a phone are moving towards almost slim to none, right? So instead of doing cold calling, what we're enabling are what we call drive-bys. Timely, compelling, contextual conversations at a time of need for our clients, and that's really changed the game for us in building pipeline. Now, pipeline isn't the end goal. Often many marketers and many of us in the room have pipeline goals. Raise your hand if you have a pipeline goal you're supposed to generate for your company. Just about everybody, right? And we have them too. But what's more important, what we're really driving towards, is profitable revenue and growth, right? My ultimate metrics about how much margin contribution in terms of dollars I've created for the business, that's ultimately what my function's measured on. Pipeline is a means to get there. Number of leads is a means to get there. But it's about contributing to the bottom line of the company. So what we've done is we don't stop. Marketing doesn't stop once the deal gets in the hands of sellers. We actually have put together a dual-pronged pursuit marketing play. The first is for any opportunity that hits a certain size threshold and stage threshold, we automatically start serving up more and more content to them. Analyst credibility, case studies, testimonials, things that are important in the buy cycle. Automatically triggered via the slides I showed a couple minutes ago by APIs between Salesforce and Terminus. The second thing is for our large pursuits, the ones that are really strategic for our business or tend to be towards the top end of what we sell and deliver, we do bespoke pursuit marketing. So we develop the custom ad units that tailor the message to the pursuit. We talk to the sales teams, what intelligence do you have that you've garnered through discovery? How does that balance against what we see in the Bombora intent data versus our competitors we're looking at? Also, coming back to the topics within clusters. What do those topics tell us around the entry point conversations or the hot buttons that we need to include in our message copy, our landing page copy, our content assets, to where the language we're speaking matches the language the client's looking for the need that they have at that point in time. And bringing all of those elements together via the human interactions and the data we receive, you start to get some magic that sits in the middle. And so that's what pursuit marketing is about. It's about helping us accelerate the win rates, accelerate the deal cycles by making sure we're as contextual as we possibly can for that pursuit relative to our competition. Now, we also see intent data giving us a competitive edge in 3 or 4 different areas. I hit 3 on this slide because marketers like things in 3, 5s, and 7s, right? The first is, and this is a use case that if you're not using this today and you're struggling with sales adoption or buy-in for intent data, I encourage you to start looking at this now. This is the number one thing that I have seen in my current company, my prior company, that sales gravitates towards the most, which is who are the competitors in my deal cycle? What we've seen with the Bombora data, it's roughly 60 to 70% accurate, so it's directional. You bounce that against the intelligence that the teams go through in their discovery cycles. You put those together, you can quickly figure out who you're competing against and what sort of FUD do you need to introduce in the sales cycle. What sort of positioning, positive positioning do you need to put in while depositioning your competitors? This is the number one thing that gets you to the adoption phase, in my view, at least what I've seen in the past couple companies of where I've been at, particularly when you start to show how it trends over time. The second is if the data helps us identify potential red flags in some of our larger organizations we do business with. What I mean by that is by looking at time series graphs of when they're starting to research topics, when they're starting to crank up their intensity of research on specific competitors, oftentimes I can see when we have a potential delivery issue brewing that we need to go solve. And if we don't solve it, it increases the risk and likelihood that that client's going to go depart for someone else. And we all know it's more expensive to get a new client than it is to retain an existing one. So we use the data to identify those red flags. The third is, and every month I'm in our what we call our SLT with our CEO and our CFO and all the C-suite. And we look at win-loss data. Which of the big deals are we winning and why? And we have a third-party firm that actually does the win-loss analysis. Which one are we losing and why? Every time we do this, in the background, I'm pulling up the Bombora intent data. I'm doing the trend series analysis on the fly using the Bombora UI. And I take control of the screen. I flash up for that loss we just had. Here's what I see in trending of our competitors over the past 6 to 12 or 18 months, depending on the nature of the deal. It is hugely enlightening because it shows there were things that we should have seen in those deals that we lost that we didn't see because we weren't necessarily paying attention to it. I've got my CEO now up on stage at our sales kickoff talking to his leadership team about how we're leveraging the Bombora intent data. And CEOs generally don't like to get in the weeds of things like this, but every time he's asking the same question, what should we have seen that we didn't see? So it's changing that behavior across the board for us. Let's talk a little bit about the results. Pretty cool in a year of radical transformation, so keep in mind, turned over the staff, changed the culture, ripped and replaced the entire MarTech stack, migrated the CMS, all going through a company-wide transformation. We generated 160% of our targeted marketing pipeline for the year. What's the good news is we did that. The bad news is we've signed up for a much higher target this year. Our average time to follow up on qualified leads now is down to the minutes, and when we see it actually executed that way, we see some of our largest deals show up in our pipeline because we're first to reach them with something compelling and provocative that gets the prospect to think about us versus our competitors. Lead noise. We've taken our lead quantity down over 56%. I can't tell you how helpful that's been in our conversations with sales. It gets noise out of the system. This noise kills marketing efficiency, kills your field marketing relationships, kills your ability to actually drive strategic planning together, kills sales efficiency because they're chasing things that won't ever materialize to anything. We've taken that down by over half, at the same time increasing our conversion by over 50% by going through this sort of approach, this sort of process. We're just scratching the surface of what we can do. So what's next for us? Once again, coming back to that white space analysis, looking at our existing accounts, this is another area where I think we're beginning to scratch the surface of unlocking more strategic spend in the accounts that we're already doing business with today, providing more value to them in ways that are adjacent and complementary to our current delivery, ways that are complementary to helping them ultimately lower their risk of being breached and building their resiliency so should they be breached, they have a better response to it. They can contain the damage so they don't show up in the headlines, right? We don't want any of our clients to show up like a SolarWinds did a few years ago. You can pick any industry, healthcare, financial services, critical infrastructure, any industry, you see headlines from companies that have been breached over and over again with massive regulatory fines, loss of brand and reputation, loss of customers, loss of revenue. There's one manufacturing company that got hit. They were taken offline for 3 days. They make equipment. Their company was shut down for 3 days because of a breach, because of ransomware that came in and they couldn't react to it. They were not a client of ours. We're on the backside of this for sure. But we want to find ways to provide more value in these accounts to ultimately help them defend against these things that are inevitable. Because every company out there, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to get popped. All the companies you work with, if they haven't been hit already, they will get hit. And they'll get hit time and time again. So helping us provide more strategic value by finding more opportunities to go deliver that is really important for us. The second is beginning to look at the intent data throughout the whole life cycle of the client engagement, right? So not just get it to the point of an opportunity, get it to the point of win-loss, but looking at it throughout its whole delivery cycle. How's the onboarding going? Are they starting to get nervous and starting to look at different things? When we get closer to the renewal side or the extension side, 6 to 12 months before, are they starting to try to learn about our competitors? So we can get ahead of that and we can go introduce the competitive positioning right? Better position us, deposition those that we compete against, hopefully get to that renewal faster, hopefully do it at a better price point, but really important for us as a business to help continue our growth. The third, and this is a really interesting one, it's going beyond sales and marketing, right? So for example, we have a consulting team. Our consulting team is barely looking at this data right now, but they are involved at the highest levels of our client organizations. And part of my job this next year is to get them to really focus on this so they can understand what those organizations have been tasked to do by their leadership. What topics, what content, what areas of cybersecurity are they spending more energy on? Is their intensity increasing? So they can bring more strategic advice on how do those companies need to think about it. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time with our consultants coming forward. Likewise, our operations and delivery teams for the example I just shared. And also we're beginning to run some test cases with HR that are in their very early stages. So with that, I did want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A, unless you're telling me no. No Q&A.
Actually, what we're going to do now is go to a coffee break. So we'll see you back in about 10 minutes, and Craig, after he gets some coffee. So
yeah, I need more coffee. Thank you, guys.